You're listening to Dodge Movie Podcast. Your hosts are Christy and Mike Dodge, the founders of Dodge Media Productions. We produce films and podcasts, so this is a podcast about films. Join them as they share their passion for filmmaking.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Dodge Movie Podcast. This week, we are talking about the 2005 film Serenity, which is a continuation of Joss Whedon's Firefly on Fox. We watched it on Apple, but it's also available on Prime for $3.99. It stars Nathan Fillion, Gina Torres, Alan Tudyk, Chiwetel Ejiofor. Sorry, Mr. Ejiofor.
Thought he was in Okafor or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, that dude.
Marina Baccarin, Adam Baldwin, Jules Sate, Sean Maher, Summer Blau, and Ron Glass. Like I said last week, the DP was Jack Green, who also did Unforgiven in 1992 and Bridges of Madison County in 1995. The filming locations were Diamond High School in Pomona.
Wow. Oh, that must have been for the Planet Miranda.
Yeah. Desert Star Park in Borrego.
Borrego, maybe?
Springs, California, and the Huntington Library in San Marino. I think the forest scenes were done in the Angeles National Forest in Santa Clarita.
I'm kind of curious what they did at the Huntington Library. Some old stomping grounds.
Yeah. The synopsis for this film is the crew of the ship Serenity try to evade an assassin sent to recapture Telepath River.
Yep.
Oh, Telepath. Yeah, I was like, why is River capitalized? Right. Capture the telepath named River. Mm-hmm. Okay. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 taglines for you to choose from. All
right. Spoiled for choices.
All right, buckle in, everybody. Can't stop the signal.
That only makes sense after you've seen the film. Not keen on that.
Space pirates on the run.
Too generic.
They're armed. She's dangerous.
Not good.
This one river you do not want to cross.
Okay, way too clever.
You will never take the sky from me.
Huh?
Sounds like a song title, or like a song, like
right.
a lyric in a
Right.
song. The future is worth fighting for.
Very generic.
Okay. And the last one, they aim to misbehave.
Perfect.
Are you just liking it because it's the last one?
No, because that's one of Mal's famous lines that
right.
he delivered in this film.
That's
I
right.
aim to misbehave. Now, what I would have gone for the tagline is, watch this film to stick it to the bastard at Fox who canceled Firefly.
Yeah. So if you don't know, let's see if we can do, you probably should do this more than me because let me see how much I get right.
Okay.
Let's play a game.
Let's play a game.
Okay. There once was a show called Firefly.
Correct.
Who was the showrunner, writer, director was Joss Whedon.
Correct.
And all of the people's names that I butchered in the very beginning, sorry,
Except
actors.
for the third build, he wasn't in the show.
Okay. They were like space pirates, kind of. Could you say that? Were they a band of do-gooders? They were, no. They were like merchant marines, or what were they?
Those are all fairly accurate. So in the milieu, they were former soldiers from the losing side who had taken up this ship, and they were maybe smugglers more than pirates. They didn't so much take stuff from other people, but they would, have cargo that was not strictly legal. Take jobs like, like maybe like robbing a place that had medicine that other people needed. So very Robin Hood-like.
Mm-hmm. And the fans of this show, they call themselves the Browncoats.
Very good.
Because Mal, who is played by Nathan Fillion, he wears a long brown coat.
Which comes from when they were on the losing side. That was the uniform of the losing side.
And so, do you remember anything about, I didn't look this up, about the ratings? Like, was it a highly rated show?
It was highly rated amongst the nerd fans, so it had plenty of staying power, but it was on Fox, so they cancel all good shows.
Yes. And so when it was canceled, this was one of the first films that kind of got organically, I think this and Veronica Mars, it was a very organic fan kind of surge of attention and how dare you, and we want our show back.
There is someone at Fox who made that decision, and there are people in Hollywood who know that person's name. And if they ever let that person's name out, I would fear for their life. This was a horrifically stupid decision that has got the nerdiverse. I mean, they're ready for blood.
Right.
So this was maybe an attempt to calm the natives down a little bit. We'll give them a film. We'll let Joss kind of wrap up and call it a day.
And so this is how Joss would have ended the series, I believe I read somewhere.
Yeah. As far as I know, that was the whole thing about the Reavers. That was going to be an arc that went over the entire series. So he just kind of skipped ahead to the end.
And in doing my research, they kind of changed something because I believe Alan Tudyk's character actually died in the series, and so they resurrected him for the film.
I don't remember him dying in the series, but he may have. It's been a long time since I've watched
Maybe
those
I'm
episodes.
thinking, because at the end of the film,
He dies. And that is, I mean, maybe narratively required because he's obviously the best character, which we know because he wears the Aloha shirt, and only the very best characters wear Aloha shirts. But that was brutal when they killed Wash.
Yeah. That was tough. Okay, so give us your pickup line.
Earth that was could no longer sustain our numbers, which doesn't really make sense unless you think of it in terms of Fox killing the show.
Right. So as someone who kind of was late to the Firefly party, I didn't watch the show initially. Did I watch like later seasons, like when we got together?
You watched it when I rented the DVDs from Netflix. Probably.
Oh, okay.
That's probably when you saw it.
Yeah. So but I wanted to give my little shout out to the filmmaker because you didn't need to have watched Firefly to enjoy this film.
That is correct. It stands on its own.
Which kudos to writer, director Joss Whedon. I don't have anything listed for cinematography, but it looked great.
Yeah, so I have a few notes. First of all, it opens with oodles of visual effects, and they hold up pretty well, right?
I would agree.
CGI spaceships apparently do pretty well. There was one thing I made a note of because as a director, I appreciated this. There's an opening scene where a doctor is trying to run from the third build person. The operative is the name of the character who's going to kill them. And they have this inexplicable extreme close-up of them tripping on a dead guard's ankle. So you very much could have just shown them running in the wide and tripping over the dead guard, but they had the extreme close-up, and I immediately thought, they're covering a cut. And having been there, I'm like, I feel you, bro. There's some strange lighting choices, which I think is intended to give us a sense of being a little bit out of sorts. But one thing that I thought was really an interesting choice was whenever they're on the planet Miranda, all of the shots are at least a full stop overexposed. And I'm not exactly sure why, but I mean, it's constant.
It was noticeable.
I also noticed a couple things. One is the steady cam that they used to circle River when she was having flashbacks on Miranda. Reminds me of my very own cinematographer steady cam. Quick cuts and lack of lighting makes the action sequences more exciting. So when River opens a can of whoop ass in that like bar area, it's very dark and there's a lot of quick cuts, so it makes it look even more like action-y quick. And then the last thing I have a note of under cinematography is this is literally the only film I can think of where it's raining during daytime. They have a shot where it's raining during the day. That never happens in Hollywood.
I do remember being very impressed with the chase scene that goes through the forest because it didn't look CGI. And I feel like I saw a behind the scenes and I'm trying to remember. It looked like they were actually filming it practically.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised simply because of budget. They might have done a lot of stuff practically, right?
I know it's Alan Tudyk and Nathan Fillion, but now I can't. Were they on horses? No. Were they on like a space speeder kind of thing?
Yeah, I think that it was supposed to be kind of like a gator, but a hovercraft kind of version.
Yeah, and I remember. Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, everybody. All the movies are starting to run together. At the very opening, it's set in 2517, and it's a teacher, and she's with her students. And I did wonder where this beautiful garden was, and it's the botanical gardens in LA. Oh, nope. I didn't write it down. It's some beautiful botanical gardens in LA.
Right. So I'd read when the show was airing that one of the source inspirations for this for Joss Whedon was a book. It was called something like Angels of Death or Angels of Mercy or something about the War of Northern Aggression, the Civil War, right? And so the browncoats are obviously the Confederates. They lost, right? And so what do soldiers do when they lose? Then he sets up very much the empire or the whatever they call it, the strong, overly powerful central government, which is again very much calling back to the Civil War, with the North having this idea of a strong federal government and the states not having much say at all. So very much Whedon takes on this as kind of this, commentary about the large, centralized, all-powerful government entity squishing the little guy. And Mal even talks in dialogue about they're just trying to, survive to the next week, basically. But I find this fascinating because in the current era, the idea of a government that makes things worse under the guise or the slogan of protecting your health. So they actually engineered the thing that caused the reverse. So they made things far worse by trying to get rid of this aggression or this free thinking. And it was interesting seeing 30 years later, or however long it's been since it was made, how I think it's especially piquant in the current situation, because to me, the warning about the dangers of an all-powerful government and how it's pretty much un-American is particularly appropriate in the current era as well as in the show.
I felt like the aircraft, especially the interior scenes, was very reminiscent of like Star Wars, so like the Millennium Falcon.
So I made note of that. So I thought, at least for the TV show, and maybe I got this wrong, so some brown coats can write in and tell me if I got this wrong. I thought they built the actual interiors of the Serenity in full scale, the whole ship.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's big.
It was big. And so if I remember correctly, the trivia I'd heard was that when they were shooting, the actors would actually go hang out in the kitchen area when they weren't shooting together instead of going back to their trailer.
Oh, that's fun.
But the area where Mr. Universe, who's played by Bernard from the Santa Claus, it looks like the Death Star. I don't think there's anything you can say that's not, that it wasn't specifically designed to look like the Death Star, where there's this column within this side, this inexplicable giant void where if you fell, you would fall for like hours before you hit and died. And then the Alliance Space Navy crew members look like Imperial or Death Star crew members, right? You could see them on the bridge of a Star Destroyer. So to me, it was very obvious that the art department was tipping the cap to Star Wars.
Yeah, definitely. My favorite line was delivered by Adam Baldwin's character, Jane, which I think it's interesting that why did they give Adam... all the names are very interesting.
Yeah, I think they do more in
Is that his last name?
I think it is. It's spelled with a Y, Jayne. I think they talk about more in the series. At least they heckle him more for having a lady's name. Speaking of identity thief.
Right.
Sandy Patterson.
Yeah. But is he talking about River when he says this, I think? Or is he talking
Says
about
what?
He says, she's starting to disrupt my calm.
Yeah, I think so. And I do like that. And it turns out that other people agree you can purchase those sweatshirts on the internet.
Right. I loved that line because he's traditionally not a calm character. And so he was obviously trying to really get himself into a calm mindset.
Right.
And I believe it was River was upsetting him. Or maybe it was my favorite actress makes an appearance in this movie. And I was absolutely overjoyed.
This being?
Sarah Paulson.
Oh, that is correct. Sarah Paulson plays a doctor.
Yes. What do they call it? Like, what did they do to Tupac? A hologram.
Yeah, it was a hologram.
Yeah, of Sarah.
Yeah, isn't that going to be interesting if Tupac becomes a verb for hologram and not remembered for
everybody
music?
Knows, everybody knew what I meant.
Yeah, they did. Absolutely. Yeah, there's I aim to misbehave and she is starting to damage my calm. Those are good ones.
Good Jane lines.
Well, aim to misbehave is Mal, but those are there's some good quotes in this kind of show and movie, but in this movie there's also washes I'm like a leaf on the wind, which I have seen that license plate frame on the road.
That's awesome.
So there's some really clever lines in the whole series, which I think was mostly, if not entirely, written by Joss himself.
I believe so, yes.
Credits to him for the dialogue.
This film feels a little, especially near the end, a little darker, a little rougher, a little gorier near the end.
Yes.
With the space battle.
Than the TV show.
I'm sure he couldn't get away with a lot of that. So he kind of was able to flex that muscle here.
Yeah, I think there was even the episode in the series where they're running out of air, which is kind of, I think they encounter another ship. You don't see the kind of the gory reavers that you do, I think, in the film.
Under editing, we were both surprised that in 10 minutes into the film, we have character credits, which kind of took me out of the film because the very first one, it's Mal on screen and it says Nathan Fillion. And I was just like, well, nice way to just, I know that's Nathan Fillion, but I'm supposed to be believing that it's Mal. And then the next one, I believe, it says like Gina Torres and she's on screen, she's like screen left. So I thought that was an odd choice.
Agreed.
Because it completely, you're like, wait, what? It was very, I don't want to say confusing because I knew what was going on, but.
So this is something I've done a little bit of research recently about credits. And to me, I do find that interesting that there is a tradition to have, in addition to the title, at least the main actors' names at the front of the film. But I agree with you. I think it especially in this case, it kind of takes the viewer out of the film, reminding them that, oh, here's a famous actor. And like you said, we knew who Nathan Fillion was.
Right.
So maybe you could have done it at the beginning of the film, like kind of in the old days. Or left that to the end of the film and just done the title. Because
it was so far into the movie that we paused it because it was like, wait. And it was like 10:34, I believe. Yeah, it was over 10 minutes in. It was strikingly deep. Like I said, a very believable chase in the desert scene near the beginning. Oh, I loved it when the ship was in trouble. The shaky cam, which we know so well because when you have an elevator that kind of shudders to a stop. Right. You shake the camera. Yeah. So it worked out well. Yeah, I liked that. And then I said, River is a killing machine in a dress, no less, because she's walking through this one section and she's wearing a dress that basically is like a slip dress. Yeah. It's so thin. And she is just killing bad guy after bad guy after bad guy, just left and right. And I was just like, damn. So obviously this is a recurring theme for Joss because Buffy the Vampire Slayer, right? Sarah Michelle Gellar is 5'2" and 100 pounds, tiny little thing. Then Dollhouse, right? He had a lot of
teen girls that were kicking butt. Here, River. And I mean, it's a by the premise, by the bit thing. But one thing I do kind of mention is just the physics of somebody that tiny. If you generate a ton of force, physics is going to say that the guy who weighs twice as much as you will move backward half as much as you will. This is why offensive linemen in football are 300 plus pounds. They just so they don't move. So that part, when you throw in the fact that she's barefoot and wearing, in essence, just a slip or maybe, jammies, and she's laying whoop ass on the whole room. Yes, it's there to kind of make it extreme, but it is a little bit like, okay, I could buy that she's like faster than they are. So like some good throat punches or eye gouges, totally get. But yeah, she's kind of hell on wheels, just goes through the room like they're not even there.
So now's a good time to bring up that in my research, Summer was like a trained ballerina. And so they said that she was very good at the fight scenes because she just treated them like, kind of like dance steps. And she was really, really good at learning them and executing them. The thing she wasn't so good at was remembering her lines. And so much so that when she would mess up a line, they would go, Summer! And it became such a thing that if Nathan Fillion messed up a line, he would go, Summer! And it became the next swear for any time any of the actors messed up a line. Right. So that is not a reputation I would want to have on set.
So it's interesting. We were just talking about this the other day, that one of the many reasons I don't think I would be a good actor is because memorizing lots and lots of dialogue seems like it would be challenging. But on a movie, right? I don't know how many pages they shot a day, but with all those different characters, apologies to Summer Glau, but I don't know how much dialogue you really have to memorize. Whereas we were watching a play where the two actors had long soliloquies that they had to deliver. And to me, that was like when I was in school and you have to memorize a speech to give, like for the speech contest or whatever. That was tons and tons. But then you think, I don't know what her dialogue was. But yeah, you could see if she had a couple of sentences and, Nathan delivers this long thing and then she flubs it up. Yes, Summer!
I would just hate that. I guess.
Yeah, you became notorious for being like a goof.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
In the cargo bay, just after a Reaver is shot, some of the crates behind River have the message reusable container, do not destroy. Printed on them. It's an inside joke because the ship set had to be rebuilt from scratch for the movie because the original from Firefly was destroyed.
Well, that makes sense because even if they built the whole thing, you wouldn't keep it around when the show. It was interesting. Speaking though of sets, I remember years ago there was some chatter on the internet that this TV show called The Sarah Connor Chronicles about the Terminator universe had been canceled, and people were going back and forth. And then somebody said, "No, I was on the lot, and they've torn down the sets. The show is dead." And that is really pretty much the death knell, is when they tear the sets down because they're going to use that space for something else. So it wouldn't surprise me after that person whose life is in jeopardy at Fox canceled the show that of course the location people, the facilities or whatever the equivalent is, like, well, we got to free up this warehouse for another purpose.
I wonder if it's the same guy that canceled The Grinder.
It could be. And if so, that person is in double jeopardy. They really need to run to another country.
Was there any head trauma in this film?
Well, yes, there was. In the opening bank heist, Jane slams a guard's head to the ground. River kicks some heads in the fight in the club. The operative kicks the living crap out of Mal. And then, this is a good one, River throat punches her brother Simon and then kicks him to the deck. The operative throws Mal to the deck in the Death Star fight, hitting his head. And then Mal gives the operative both a Glasgow kiss and the people's elbow. So lots of good head trauma in this one.
And did we get a I don't remember her name, Gina Torres and Alan Tudyk kiss.
Smoochie, Smoochie, Smoochie. I don't think in the movie we see Wash
Zoe.
and Zoe kiss. We also don't see Inara and Mal have any sort of interaction, even though the sexual tension is there.
It's very strong. You can tell those two like each other.
Right, and it's explored through the series. So her role is closer to a geisha than a prostitute, but there's always that there's a jealousy thing. It's really well done.
I would think a protection too. Like his character would feel very protective over her.
Yeah, but she's very fiercely independent.
Yes.
So there's that sparks.
Yeah.
And Nathan, not that he's not a handsome fellow now, but wowzers. Back then, he was quite the leading man.
So it's a futuristic vehicle, but do you have any driving review that you'd like to discuss?
I do not have a driving review. I don't know the specifications of the Firefly class spaceship, so I can't comment about the realism of that. There's the previously aforementioned chase scene. Again, they're hovercraft. I can't really comment a whole lot on that. So this one, I'm going to have to give it a bit of a pass on the driving review.
That's fair. All right, shall we go to the numbers then?
Let's go to the numbers.
Okay, this Universal Pictures Barry Mendel production had a budget of $39 million, and it made $40 million.
That's a little short because I think it sold $1 billion of DVDs.
I agree with you. That is a worldwide number, and I think you're right. It probably went on to sell many, many more. But I go to numbers.com and that's...
Well, I'll be honest. I think the theater was only the people who loved the show.
Well, it's interesting you say that because the IMDb score is 7.8 out of 10. And when I went over to Rotten Tomatoes to get those scores, there is no critic score, but the audience gives it 100%.
Brown coats represent.
Yep. But why do you think, I don't know how Rotten Tomatoes really works. Let's see. So this released in theaters, right?
Yes.
This is long before streaming, 2005. So I wonder why it doesn't have a critic score.
I don't know either. I think it got zero marketing. If I recall correctly, it had literally zero marketing. The studio tried to bury it. But of course, brown coats represent. The nerds knew that it was in the theater. So I think that's where the money it did make come from. But yeah, and so my guess is because the studio didn't push the critics to review it, they didn't publish any reviews.
One of the things, and now having had this conversation, I wish I would have looked at, the numbers gives you like opening box office numbers, and then as it goes, second week, third week, fourth week. That would be curious to look at that.
I'd be stunned if it had more than a week or two in theaters.
No, I agree.
The studio really didn't want this film shown.
But that's a huge testament, though, then that it did make $40 million because that's an opening weekend.
Yeah, I would think it's just a week or two. But again, every nerd was salivating over this for years.
Right. So this is just under 2 hours at 1:59. It is PG-13. It does have some gore and violence, like we said at the end, but like I said, there was not even a kiss. And then I guess language, I don't remember.
No salty language, no gratuitous topless shot. I mean, I don't know why PG-13 other than maybe the Reavers are a little scary.
Mm-hmm. And it's listed as an action adventure in a sci-fi genre. So, like I said, we watched it on Apple. I think that'll do it for us. Don't forget to turn in your guess as to what our theme of the month is. I feel like we've been giving lots of hints along the way last week and this week. We will be talking about Tombstone next week, and then that will wrap up the month of August. So get your guesses in and never forget.
Dodges never stop, and neither do the movies.
Thanks for listening to Dodge Movie Podcast with Christy and Mike Dodge of Dodge Media Productions. To find out more about this podcast and what we do, go to dodgemediaproductions.com. Subscribe, share, leave a comment, and tell us what we should watch next. Dodges never stop, and neither do the movies.